When the richest man in the world crashes in a tiny mountain village with no internet, no electricity, and no way out, everyone expects him to throw money at the problem and disappear. But what happens next shocks the entire world. Elon Musk thought he was trapped when his private jet broke down in remote Nepal. He had billion-dollar companies to run, rockets to launch, and meetings that couldn't wait. The last thing he wanted was to be stuck with 43 strangers in a place so small it doesn't appear on most maps. But sometimes, the universe has different plans. What starts as the worst day of his life becomes the beginning of something extraordinary. A 7-year-old girl with ancient eyes whispers a secret that makes his face go pale. A 12-year-old boy plans to risk his life to save his village. And a mining company arrives with bulldozers, determined to destroy this community forever. In 7 days, Elon will have to choose between the life he's always known and a future he never imagined. He'll discover that the most advanced technology in the world means nothing without human connection. And he'll learn that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. But here's what no one saw coming. What did that little girl whisper to him on the very first day that changed everything? And how does a faded photograph hold the key to a promise made 8 years ago that will transform not just one village, but the way the entire world thinks about progress? The answers will leave you stunned. The white clouds looked like cotton balls outside the small airplane window. Elon Musk pressed his face against the cool glass and watched the world below. Mountains stretched as far as his eyes could see, covered in green trees and dotted with tiny villages that looked like toy houses. "Mr. Musk, we should arrive in Bangkok in 3 hours," said Maria, his assistant. She sat across from him, typing fast on her silver laptop. Her fingers moved like a pianist playing a very important song. Elon rubbed his tired eyes. He had been awake for 20 hours straight. First, there was the big meeting in New Delhi about saving the Earth's climate. Then, phone calls about problems with his rocket company. Now, his phone kept buzzing with messages about trouble at his car factory. Buzz, buzz. Another text message. Buzz, buzz. Another email. Buzz, buzz. Another emergency that needed his attention right away. "Sometimes I wish I could just turn everything off," Elon whispered to himself. "Be careful what you wish for." Suddenly, the airplane shook like a dog shaking water off its fur. Elon's coffee cup slid across the small table. Maria's laptop almost fell to the floor. "What was that?" Maria asked, her voice tight with worry. The plane shook again, harder this time. Red lights started flashing on the walls like angry Christmas decorations. A loud beeping sound filled the cabin. Captain Rodriguez's calm voice came through the speakers. "Mr. Musk, please put on your seatbelt. We have a serious problem with our engine." Elon's heart started beating fast, like a drum in his chest. He looked out the window again. The mountains below suddenly seemed much closer than before. "We need to make an emergency landing, Captain," Rodriguez continued. "I'm looking for a safe place to put the plane down." Maria grabbed Elon's hand. Her palm was sweaty and cold. "Are we going to be okay?" she whispered. Elon tried to sound brave. "Captain Rodriguez is the best pilot in the world. We'll be fine." But inside, his stomach felt like it was full of butterflies, doing backflips. The plane tilted to the right, then to the left. Through the window, Elon could see they were flying very low now. He could make out individual trees, small rivers that sparkled like silver ribbons, and patches of farmland that looked like a green and brown quilt. "There," Captain Rodriguez shouted over the intercom. "I see a clearing near a village. Hold. On tight!" The plane dropped fast like a roller coaster going down the biggest hill. Elon closed his eyes and thought about his mother, his children, and all the things he still wanted to do in his life. He thought about the rockets he wanted to send to Mars, the cars that could help save the planet, and the inventions he hadn't built yet. Thump! The plane hit the ground hard. Elon felt like he was inside a washing machine spinning at full speed. Bags fell from overhead compartments. Papers flew everywhere like confetti at a party nobody wanted to attend. Screech! The plane slid across the bumpy ground, bouncing and jerking like a wild horse trying to throw off its rider. Then, suddenly, everything was quiet. Dust floated in the air like tiny dancers. Elon opened his eyes and looked around. Maria was breathing, heavily, but seemed okay. Captain Rodriguez appeared from the cockpit, his uniform wrinkled, but his smile reassuring. "We're alive," the captain said simply. "We made it." Elon unbuckled his seatbelt with shaking hands and looked out the window. They had landed in a small clearing surrounded by green mountains that rose up like giant sleeping elephants. In the distance, he could see a village with stone houses that had colorful prayer flags fluttering like butterflies in the wind. People were running toward the plane. Men, women, and children poured out of the village like water from a broken dam. They wore bright clothes, red, yellow, blue, and green, that made them look like flowers in a garden. Captain Rodriguez opened the plane door. Fresh mountain air rushed in, cool and clean, so different from the recycled air they had been breathing. An elderly man with kind eyes and a wooden walking stick approached the plane. His face was weathered like old leather, but his smile was warm as sunshine. He pressed his palms together in front of his chest and bowed slightly. "Welcome, sky visitor," he said in careful English, each word chosen like a precious gem. "You are safe now." Elon stepped out of the plane on wobbly legs. The ground felt solid and real under his feet. All around him, curious villagers gathered, chattering in a language he didn't understand. Children peeked out from behind their mothers' colorful skirts, their dark eyes wide with wonder. For the first time in years, Elon's phone wasn't buzzing. There were no emails, no urgent meetings, no crises demanding his immediate attention. The world of constant connection had suddenly gone completely silent. As villagers began helping to unload their bags from the plane, a small girl with pigtails and a red dress tugged gently on Elon's sleeve. She looked up at him with eyes that seemed older than her years and whispered something that made his face turn pale. But what she said would remain a mystery until the very end of this incredible journey. Elon stared at the little girl who had whispered those strange words to him. Her name was Dolma, he learned later, and she had eyes that seemed to hold secrets bigger than her 7-year-old body could carry. But before he could ask what she meant, Captain Rodriguez pulled him aside. "Mr. Musk, I need to check the engine damage," the captain said, wiping grease from his hands with a dirty cloth. "But I'm afraid we won't be flying anywhere soon." "How long?" Elon asked, pulling out his phone to check for messages. The screen showed no signal bars, just empty space where his connection to the world used to be. Maybe 3 days. Maybe more. Captain Rodriguez shook his head sadly. "Some parts are badly broken. We'll need special tools, and the nearest city is very far away." 3 days. Elon felt panic rising in his chest, like water filling a sinking boat. He had a board meeting tomorrow morning in California, a rocket launch next week in Texas. Thousands of people depending on him to make important decisions. There has to be another way, Elon said, his voice getting louder. "A helicopter? A car? Something?" The elderly man with the walking stick, the one who had welcomed them, approached slowly. "Sir, my name is Pemba. I am grandfather of this village. The nearest road for cars is 12 hours walking through dangerous mountain paths. No helicopters come here. 12 hours through mountains. Elon looked at his expensive leather shoes and knew he wouldn't make it halfway. You will stay with us, Grandfather Pemba said gently, as if reading Elon's worried thoughts. We have room. We have food. You are welcome in our home. Maria looked relieved, but Elon felt trapped like a bird in a cage. He was used to controlling everything, fixing every problem with money or technology. Now he was stuck in a place where neither seemed to work. Grandfather Pemba led them through the village on a dirt path barely wide enough for 2 people. Stone houses lined both sides, their walls thick and strong like they had been there forever. Bright prayer flags hung between the buildings, flapping in the mountain breeze like colorful messages to the sky. Children followed them, giggling and pointing. Some brave ones touched Elon's jacket and ran away, laughing. An old woman smiled and waved from her doorway. A man fixing his roof stopped working to bow politely. How many people live here? Maria asked. 43, Grandfather Pemba replied. But every year, the number gets smaller. They reached a modest stone house with a red wooden door. Inside, it was simple but clean. The walls were decorated with beautiful woven cloth in bright patterns. A small altar in the corner held candles that flickered like tiny dancing flames. Please, sit, said a woman who looked about 30 years old. She had kind eyes like her father and wore a traditional dress with an apron tied around her waist. I am Lakpa, Pemba's daughter. As they sat on cushions around a low wooden table, Lakpa brought them tea in small cups and rice with vegetables that smelled like heaven. Elon realized he hadn't eaten real food in hours, just airplane snacks and energy bars. A boy appeared in the doorway. He looked about 12 years old, with messy black hair and curious eyes that reminded Elon of himself as a child. The boy stared at Elon like he was looking at a person from another planet. This is my son, Tenzin, Lakpa said proudly. Tenzin, say hello to our guests. Hello, the boy said shyly in perfect English. Are you really the man who makes rockets? Elon nearly choked on his tea. How do you know about rockets? Tenzin disappeared for a moment and came back with something that made Elon's heart sink. It was a science magazine, old and water-damaged, with torn pages and a faded cover. But there on the front was Elon's picture next to one of his rockets. I found this in the city 2 years ago, Tenzin explained, holding the magazine like it was made of gold. I've read it 100 times. I want to be an engineer like you when I grow up. That's wonderful, Elon said, but his voice sounded sad even to himself. As they ate dinner by candlelight, Lakpa told them the heartbreaking truth about their village. Every year, young people left for the cities to find work. They sent money back to their families, but they never returned. The school has only 15 children now, Lakpa said, stirring her rice slowly. 5 years ago, we had 30. 10 years ago, we had 50. What about jobs here? Maria asked. Lakpa shook her head. Only farming, only small things. The young people want big dreams, big opportunities. They can't find them in Kurpatal. Kurpatal? Elon asked. It means Lake of Happiness, Grandfather Pemba explained. Long ago, there was a beautiful lake here, but it dried up during a bad drought many years before I was born. Now, we just have the name. Tenzin looked up from his food. Mama, tell them about the school. Lakpa's eyes filled with tears. The government says if we don't have 20 students by next month, they will close our school. The children will have to walk 4 hours each way to the next village, or—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Or they'll have to leave their families and go to the city," Grandfather Pemba finished quietly. Elon felt something heavy settle in his stomach. This wasn't just about a village losing population. This was about families being torn apart, about children forced to choose between education and staying close to the people they loved. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it more than any apology he'd ever given in a business meeting. That night, lying on a thin mattress under a metal roof, Elon stared up at stars brighter than he'd ever seen. In the city, light pollution hid most of the night sky. But here, millions of stars sparkled like diamonds scattered across black velvet. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't racing with plans and problems and profits. Instead, he kept thinking about Tenzin's worn magazine and Lhakpa's tears, and the way Grandfather Pemba had said, "Lake of Happiness," like he could still see the water that used to be there. Through the thin walls, he could hear quiet voices in the next room. Lhakpa was talking to her father in their language, but her tone was worried. Then he heard crying, soft, muffled sobs that made his chest feel tight. He pressed his ear closer to the wall and caught a few English words. "Can't tell them yet." And "only 2 weeks left." And "what will we do?" Whatever secret they were keeping, it sounded like it could destroy what little hope this village had left. The rooster's crow woke Elon before sunrise. At home in California, he usually woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing with messages. Here, the only sounds were birds singing and the gentle whisper of wind through the mountains. He found Tenzin waiting outside the house, sitting on a stone step with his school bag beside him. The boy's eyes were bright with excitement, like Christmas morning had arrived early. "Good morning, Mr. Elon," Tenzin said politely. "Would you like to come to school with me today?" Elon rubbed the sleep from his eyes. "School? It's barely sunrise." "School starts when the sun comes up," Tenzin explained. "We only have a few hours before I need to help my mother with farming work." Curious, Elon followed the eager boy down a winding path. Other children joined them along the way, some as young as 6, others who looked 16. They all carried worn backpacks and notebooks held together with tape. The school was a single room made of stone and wood. Inside, 15 children sat cross-legged on a carpet that had seen better days. Some shared torn textbooks. Others wrote on small slates with pieces of chalk no bigger than their thumbs. In the corner sat a computer that looked like it came from 20 years ago. Its screen was cracked, and wires stuck out like the hair of someone who had just woken up. "That hasn't worked in 2 years," Tenzin whispered, following Elon's gaze. "We used to watch videos about science and math. Now we just imagine what they might have shown us." Lakpa stood at the front of the room with a piece of chalk in her hand. When she saw Elon, her face turned red with embarrassment. "I'm sorry you have to see our poor school," she said quietly. "We don't have much, but we try our best." "Don't apologize," Elon said, looking around the room with new eyes. "This is amazing!" The children erupted in excited whispers when they realized who was visiting. Word had spread through the village about the famous rocket man who had fallen from the sky. "Is it true you can make cars drive themselves?" asked 8-year-old Norbu, his eyes wide with wonder. "Can your rockets really go to Mars?" wondered Pema, a teenage girl with long braids. But it was quiet Karma, a 10-year-old boy with serious eyes, who asked the question that hit Elon like a punch to the stomach. "Mr. Elon, if you can build machines to leave Earth, why do you want to go? What's wrong with staying here?" The room fell silent. Even Lakpa stopped writing on the blackboard. Elon looked around at the eager faces staring at him, waiting for an answer he wasn't sure he had. "Well," Elon began slowly, sitting down on the floor with the children. "Space exploration isn't about running away from Earth. It's about making sure humans can survive if something bad happens to our planet." "Like what?" little Norbu asked. "Asteroids, climate change, wars," Elon explained. "If we live on more than one planet, we're safer." Karma nodded thoughtfully. "Like how we plant seeds in different fields. So if one crop fails, we still have food." "Exactly," Elon smiled. This 10-year-old understood something that many adults missed. For the next hour, Elon found himself sitting on the floor, surrounded by children who asked the smartest questions he'd heard in years. They wanted to know about solar panels, electric cars, and rocket engines. But they also asked why rich countries had so much, while poor villages had so little. "If you can solve problems in space," asked Pima, "why can't you solve problems here, on Earth?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Elon had spent billions of dollars trying to get to Mars, but here were brilliant children who couldn't even keep their school open. During lunch break, Lakpa pulled Elon aside. Her hands shook as she spoke, and tears threatened to spill from her eyes. "Mr. Elon, I must tell you something," she whispered, looking around to make sure no children could hear. "The government, they're not just closing our school because we don't have enough students." "What do you mean?" Elon asked. "They want our land," Lakpa said, her voice barely louder than a breath. "A mining company offered them money for the mountains around our village. They said if we leave quietly, they'll give each family some cash and help us move to the city." Elon felt his blood turn cold. "And if you don't leave, then they'll take the land anyway. Without our school, without jobs, what choice do we have?" Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. "Tenzin doesn't know yet. None of the children know. How do I tell my son that his dreams of becoming an engineer don't matter because his home won't exist?" The weight of her words settled on Elon's shoulders like a heavy blanket. These weren't just numbers on a business report. These were real people facing the destruction of everything they loved. That afternoon, Elon walked through the village with grandfather Pemba. They visited Ama Yangchen, an 89-year-old woman who served as the village healer. Her small house smelled like herbs and hope. She treated sick people with plants she gathered from the mountains because there was no real doctor for miles. "My grandmother taught me these medicines," Ama Yangchen explained, showing Elon dried leaves and roots. Her grandmother taught her, and so on back through time. If our village disappears, this knowledge disappears too. They met Dorja, a young father who worked his small potato farm with tools his grandfather had used. His hands were rough from hard work, but his smile was gentle as he played with his 3-year-old daughter in the dirt between the potato rows. "I know I could make more money in the city," Dorja told Elon, bouncing his giggling daughter on his knee. "But here, my daughter can run free in clean air. She knows her grandparents. She learns our language, our songs, our way of life. Money can't buy that." As the sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink, Grandfather Pemba stopped walking and turned to Elon. "You see now why we fight to stay," the old man said gently. "To the outside world, we are just 43 people in a forgotten place. But to us, this village is everything. It's our past, our present, and we hoped it would be our future. What will you do?" Elon asked. Pemba's shoulders sagged like he was carrying the weight of the mountains themselves. What can we do? We are small people in a big world. No one listens to the voice of a dying village. That evening, as they walked back home, Elon noticed Tenzin sneaking around behind his house. The boy had a backpack and was stuffing it with clothes and food when he thought no one was looking. "Tenzin," Elon called softly. "What are you doing?" Satib, boy, froze like a deer caught in headlights. When he turned around, his face was streaked with tears, but his jaw was set with determination that looked too old for his 12 years. "I have to go to the city," Tenzin said, his voice shaking but strong. "I heard Mama crying last night. I heard her talking to Grandfather about the mining company. If I can find work in Kathmandu, maybe I can send money back to help save our school." Elon's heart broke into a million pieces. This brave boy was willing to walk alone through dangerous mountains, leave his family, and give up his childhood to save his village. "The journey to Kathmandu is very dangerous," Elon said carefully. "Many people have died trying to walk those paths alone." "I know," Tenzin replied, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "But if I don't try, everyone I love will have to leave anyway. At least this way, maybe they can stay." Standing there in the growing darkness, looking at this 12-year-old boy, ready to sacrifice everything for the people he loved, Elon realized something that would change his life forever. All his rockets and cars and billions of dollars meant nothing if he couldn't help one brave child save his home. "You're not going anywhere," Elon said firmly, placing his hand on Tenzin's shoulder. "There has to be another way." But Tenzin pulled away, his young face twisted with pain and determination. "You don't understand, Mr. Elon. I'm the only one, in our village, who can read English well. Maybe in the city, someone will give me work, because I can help with tourists or foreign visitors. Tenzin, the mountains between here and Kathmandu are full of wild animals. There are cliffs where one wrong step means death. People twice your age have gotten lost and never come home." "I know," Tenzin shouted, then quickly lowered his voice so his mother wouldn't hear. "But what choice do I have? If I stay here, I watch everything I love disappear. If I go, maybe I can save it." Elon looked at this 12-year-old boy who was willing to risk his life for his family and felt something crack inside his chest. In his world of business meetings and rocket launches, he had forgotten what real courage looked like. It looked like a child with a torn backpack, ready to walk into danger to save the people he loved. "Give me one day," Elon said quietly. 24 hours before you do anything. Can you promise me that?" Tenzin hesitated, then nodded slowly. "One day. But then I have to go." That night, Elon lay awake on his thin mattress, staring at the corrugated metal ceiling. Through the walls, he could hear the soft sounds of family life. Lakpa humming a lullaby, Grandfather Pemba coughing quietly, Tenzin whispering prayers in his own language. These simple sounds were more beautiful than any symphony he'd ever heard in fancy concert halls. The next evening, the entire village gathered in the small community center for their weekly meeting. It was a tradition as old as the village itself, everyone coming together to share problems and look for solutions. Elon sat in the back, watching as families discussed their struggles. A mother worried about her sick baby with no doctor nearby. A farmer needed help fixing his irrigation system before the next planting season. An elderly man asked for volunteers to help repair his leaking roof. For every problem, neighbors offered solutions. They shared tools, time, and skills freely. No one had much, but everyone gave what they could. Then Lakpa stood up, her voice shaking as she spoke to the group in their language. Elon couldn't understand the words, but he could see the effect they had. Faces fell. Children looked confused. Adults began to cry quietly. She was telling them about the mining company, about the forced relocation, about the end of their world. The room erupted in desperate voices. Some people shouted angrily. Others wept openly. Parents held their children closer, as if they could protect them from the future by keeping them near. In the middle of all this chaos, little Dolma stood up. At 7 years old, she was the youngest person in the room, but something about her presence made everyone fall silent. "What if we don't give up?" she asked in her clear, sweet voice. "What if we fight?" An old man with gray hair shook his head sadly. "Fight with what, little one? We have no money, no lawyers, no powerful friends." But Dolma wasn't finished. She looked around the room with those wise eyes that seemed too old for her face. "My grandmother always told me a story about a tiny seed that fell into a crack in a big rock. Everyone said the seed was too small and the rock was too strong. But the seed didn't give up. It grew slowly, day by day, until it split the rock in half." She paused, then continued with startling wisdom. "Maybe we are like that seed. Maybe we look small, but maybe we're stronger than we know." The room was completely quiet now. Even Elon felt tears in his eyes at this child's simple but powerful words. "The mountain doesn't move for the wind," Dolma said, repeating what sounded like an old saying. "But the seed can crack the stone." Grandfather Pemba stood up slowly, his walking stick tapping on the wooden floor. "The child speaks wisdom that puts us adults to shame, but wisdom alone cannot stop bulldozers." That's when Elon realized he couldn't stay silent anymore. These people had shown him more kindness in 3 days than he'd experienced in years of business meetings and celebrity events. They had shared their food, their homes, and their hearts with a stranger who had fallen from the sky. Now it was his turn to share something with them. He stood up, and every face in the room turned toward him. The weight of their hope was both terrifying and inspiring. "My friends," Elon began, surprised by how the word friends felt so natural. "3 days ago, I thought I was trapped here. I thought this was the worst thing that could happen to my schedule, my plans, my important business." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of people who had become more than just strangers. "But now I realize something. I wasn't trapped here. I was rescued here. You didn't just save me from a plane crash. You saved me from forgetting what really matters." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. Where was he going with this? "I've spent my whole life trying to reach the stars," Elon continued, his voice growing stronger. "But you've taught me that the most important journey isn't to Mars or the moon. It's the journey to understand each other, to help each other, to protect the things that make us human." He took a deep breath, knowing that what he said next would change everything. "I want to help you save your village, not by throwing money at the problem, but by building something together. Something that will make this place too valuable for anyone to destroy." The room buzzed with excited whispers, but Elon held up his hand. "But I can't do it alone. This isn't about one rich man saving the day. This is about all of us working together to create something beautiful. Are you willing to trust me? Are you willing to work with me?" Before anyone could answer, the sound of helicopter blades filled the air outside. Through the windows, they could see bright lights landing in the village square. Doors opened, and men in expensive suits stepped out, looking completely out of place in this simple mountain village. At their head was a tall man with cold eyes and an even colder smile. Grandfather Pemba's face went pale. "The mining company," he whispered. "They said they wouldn't come until next month." The lead man approached the community center, his footsteps heavy on the wooden steps. When he entered, his presence seemed to suck all the warmth out of the room. "Good evening," he said in English, his voice smooth but threatening. "My name is Director Sharma. I represent certain business interests in this region." His eyes found Elon in the crowd, and his smile became sharper, like a knife. "Mr. Musk," he said with false politeness, "what an unexpected pleasure. I think it's time we had a conversation about your vacation in our mountains." The way he said vacation made it clear this was no friendly visit. Whatever Elon had been planning to build here, powerful people wanted to stop it before it could begin. But as Elon looked around the room at the faces of his new friends, Tenzin with his dreams of engineering, Lahakpa with her fierce love for her students, Dolma with her impossible wisdom, Grandfather Pemba with his gentle strength, he realized something important. He wasn't the same man who had crashed here 3 days ago. That man might have been intimidated by suits and threats and corporate power. This man was ready to fight for something that mattered more than money. This man had found his family. Director Sharma stepped further into the room, his shiny black shoes clicking on the wooden floor like a clock counting down to doom. Behind him, 3 other men in dark suits spread out, their eyes scanning the villagers like they were counting sheep to be sold. "Mr. Musk," Sharma continued, his voice as smooth as oil on water, "surely a man of your intelligence understands that these people are living in the past. We're offering them a chance at the future." Elon stood up slowly, feeling the eyes of every villager on him. "What kind of future?" he asked. "Jobs in the city, modern apartments with electricity and running water. Their children can attend real schools with computers and proper teachers." Sharma gestured around the simple room like it was something dirty. "Instead of this primitive existence." Grandfather Pemba struggled to his feet, his walking stick trembling in his weathered hands. "We have lived here for 400 years. Our ancestors are buried in this soil. This is not primitive. This is home." Sharma barely glanced at the old man. "Sentiment doesn't pay bills, grandfather. The mining operation will provide jobs for thousands of people. Rare earth minerals from these mountains will power the technology that runs the modern world." "And what happens to the people who already live here?" Lakpa asked, holding Tenzin close to her side. "Relocation packages," Sharma replied coldly. "Very generous ones. Each family gets cash, help finding housing in Kathmandu, and job training programs." "For how long?" Elon asked sharply. "What happens when the cash runs out and the jobs disappear?" Sharma's smile became thinner. "That's not our concern, Mr. Musk. Our concern is progress, economic development, the greater good." Little Dolma tugged on her mother's skirt and whispered, "Something." Her mother bent down to listen, then straightened up with surprise. "My daughter wants to know," the woman said in careful English, "if progress means making people sad, is it really good progress?" The question hung in the air like incense from the village temple. Even Sharma's assistants looked uncomfortable. That's when Elon made his decision. He had spent his whole life building things, rockets, cars, companies. Now it was time to build something that really mattered. "Director Sharma," Elon said, walking to the center of the room where everyone could see him. "What if I told you there was another kind of progress possible here? One that doesn't require destroying this community? Sharma laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Mr. Musk, with all due respect, you've been here 3 days. You don't understand the economic realities. Then let me show you what I understand, Elon replied. He turned to face the villagers, his new family, and took the biggest risk of his life. My friends, he began, I want to make you an offer. Not charity, not a handout, a partnership. The room was so quiet you could hear hearts beating. I've spent billions of dollars trying to get to Mars because I believe humanity needs to spread to other worlds to survive. But these past 3 days have taught me something more important. Before we colonize other planets, we need to learn how to take better care of this one. He gestured toward the window, where the lights of Sharma's helicopter cast strange shadows on the village square. What if we could make Kurpatal a model for sustainable living? Solar power for every home. Internet connection to bring the world's knowledge to your children. A way to share your traditional wisdom with people everywhere. Tenzin's eyes lit up like stars. You mean we could learn engineering without leaving our families? More than that, Elon said, his excitement growing. You could teach engineering to other kids around the world. Your mother could share her teaching methods with schools in America and Europe. Ama Yangchen could show doctors in big cities how traditional medicines work. Old Ama Yangchen, who rarely spoke at village meetings, stood up with surprising energy. You mean my grandmother's remedies could help people in faraway places? Exactly, Elon nodded. And people from faraway places could help us too. Doctors could give advice through video calls. Engineers could help design better farming systems. Students could learn from each other across oceans. Grandfather Pemba tapped his walking stick thoughtfully. This sounds like a beautiful dream, Sky Visitor. But dreams need money to become real. Do you have such money? Elon looked around the room at faces full of hope and doubt mixed together like sugar and salt. Yes, I have money, he said simply. But more importantly, you have something I need. You have wisdom about living in harmony with nature. You have strong communities where people take care of each other. You have children like Dolma who understand that real progress doesn't hurt people. Director Sharma stepped forward, his patience clearly running out. Mr. Musk, this is all very touching, but you're wasting everyone's time. The mining rights have been purchased legally. The relocation orders will be enforced. What if the villagers don't want to be relocated? Elon asked. Then they'll be relocated anyway, Sharma replied bluntly. This isn't a negotiation. That's when something amazing happened. Tenzin stepped away from his mother and walked straight up to Director Sharma. This 12-year-old boy, who barely reached the man's chest, looked up at him with complete fearlessness. Sir, Tenzin said politely, may I ask you a question? Sharma looked down at the boy with surprise. What? Do you have children? Yes. A son about your age. Would you like it if someone came to your house and told your son he had to leave forever because strangers wanted his room? Sharma's face turned red. That's completely different. This is business? No, sir, Tenzin replied calmly. This is my room. This whole village is my room. And you're a stranger telling me I have to leave. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of someone clapping slowly. It was Dolma, applauding her friend's courage. Then Lahakpa started clapping. Then Grandfather Pemba. Soon, the entire room erupted in applause for this brave boy who had spoken truth to power. Sharma's face grew darker with anger. Enough of this nonsense. You people have 48 hours to pack your belongings. The mining equipment arrives Monday morning. And if we refuse? Grandfather Pemba asked quietly. Then you'll be removed by force, Sharma snapped. Don't test us, old man. As he turned to leave, Elon called out, Director Sharma, wait! The man paused at the door, his back still turned. I'm curious, Elon continued. What company do you really work for? Because I've dealt with mining companies before, and they usually try to negotiate before they threaten children. Sharma turned around slowly, and for the first time, his mask of politeness completely disappeared. You want to know who I work for, Mr. Musk? I work for people who understand that sentiment and tradition are luxuries the world can't afford anymore. People who get things done. People like Marcus Blackwood? Elon asked quietly. The change in Sharma's expression told Elon everything he needed to know. This wasn't just about mining rights. This was personal. How did you... Sharma started, then caught himself. You're making a serious mistake getting involved in this, Musk. Some fights you can't win, no matter how much money you have. After Sharma and his men left, the village meeting continued late into the night. By candlelight, they planned something that had never been tried before. A complete transformation of a traditional mountain village into a model for sustainable living. But as they talked and planned and dreamed together, none of them knew that 50 miles away, Marcus Blackwood was already on a plane to Nepal, determined to crush this rebellion before it could inspire others. The real battle was just beginning. The next morning came too soon. Elon woke to the sound of helicopter blades chopping through the mountain air like angry wasps. Through his small window, he could see not one but 3 helicopters landing in the village square, kicking up clouds of dust that made the prayer flags snap and dance wildly. They're back, Tenzin whispered, appearing at Elon's doorway with fear in his young eyes. But this time they brought more people. Elon pulled on his clothes and rushed outside with the boy. What he saw made his blood turn cold. Men in expensive suits were climbing out of the helicopters, but these weren't government officials. These were corporate executives, their faces hard as stone and their movements precise as machines. At the center of it all stood a man Elon recognized immediately, tall, silver-haired, with eyes like chips of ice and a smile that had never known warmth. Marcus Blackwood, CEO of Himalayan Gold Corporation, and someone from Elon's past he had hoped never to see again. Well, well, Blackwood said, his voice carrying easily across the square. Elon Musk, playing hero in the mountains. Some things never change. The villagers gathered around, forming a protective circle with the children in the center. Grandfather Pemba stood at the front, leaning heavily on his walking stick, but his back was straight with dignity. You're early, Elon said, walking toward Blackwood with steady steps. Sharma said we had 48 hours. Blackwood's laugh was like breaking glass. Sharma works for me, Musk, and I've decided that 48 hours is 47 hours too many. He gestured to his men, who began unloading equipment from the helicopters, surveying tools, cameras, and official-looking documents in leather. Folders. These people are sitting on one of the richest rare earth mineral deposits in Asia, Blackwood announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. Enough lithium, copper, and cobalt to power 10,000 electric cars. Ironic, isn't it, Elon? The very materials you need for your precious Tesla batteries are right under their feet. Elon felt sick to his stomach. So you destroy an entire community for car batteries? I create progress, Blackwood replied coldly. Something you used to understand before you went soft. Hakpa stepped forward, her teacher's voice clear and strong despite her trembling hands. Mr. Blackwood, We don't want to fight with you, but this is our home. Our children were born here. Our grandparents are buried here. Blackwood barely glanced at her. Ma'am, sentiment doesn't change economics. You're 43 people sitting on resources that could benefit millions. And what about our benefits? Asked Dorja, the young farmer. What about our children's future? Your children will have jobs in the mines, Blackwood said dismissively. Better than scratching around in the dirt growing potatoes. That's when little Dolma did something that surprised everyone. She walked straight up to Marcus Blackwood, looked up at him with those wise 7-year-old eyes, and held out her hand. "Hello, Mr. Blackwood," she said politely. "Would you like to be my friend?" Blackwood stared down at the tiny girl with her outstretched hand, clearly caught off guard. His corporate executives shuffled uncomfortably behind him. What?" he stammered. "My grandmother taught me that every person has something good inside them," Dolma continued, her hand still extended. "Even when they're scared or angry, the good part is still there. Are you scared, Mr. Blackwood?" The question hung in the mountain air like morning mist. Here was this powerful man, surrounded by lawyers and executives and helicopters, being asked by a child if he was scared. For just a moment, something flickered across Blackwood's face. Not quite kindness, but something softer than the ice that usually lived in his eyes. Then it was gone. "I'm not here to make friends, little girl," he said, pulling his hand away before she could shake it. "I'm here to do business." But Dolma wasn't finished. "What kind of business makes children cry?" Blackwood's jaw tightened. "The kind that builds the modern world." "But if the modern world makes people sad," Dolma continued with heartbreaking innocence, "then maybe we're building it wrong." One of Blackwood's executives, a younger man with kind eyes, stepped forward. "Sir, maybe we should listen to what they have to say before we—" "Johnson," Blackwood cut him off sharply. "You weren't hired to think. You were hired to execute orders." That's when Grandfather Pemba did something extraordinary. Despite his age and his walking stick, he approached Marcus Blackwood with the same respectful greeting he had given Elon days earlier. "Welcome to our village," Pemba said, pressing his palms together and bowing slightly. "You look tired from your long journey. Would you like some tea?" Blackwood stared at this old man who was offering hospitality to someone trying to destroy his home. "I'm not here for tea, old man. I'm here to inform you that evacuation begins tomorrow morning at dawn. All important conversations begin with sharing food," Pemba replied gently. "It reminds us that we are all human beings who get hungry, who get thirsty, who need rest." "I don't have time for your mountain philosophy," Blackwood snapped. But Pemba continued as if he hadn't heard the insult. "Please, sit with us. Let us tell you about our village. Not just the rocks and minerals underneath, but the people who live above." What happened next would later be called the most important village, meeting in Kurpatal's 400-year history. Somehow, incredibly, Grandfather Pemba convinced Marcus Blackwood and his entire team to sit in a circle on the ground with the villagers. It started awkwardly. The executives sat stiffly in their expensive suits, checking their phones and watches. But as Grandfather Pemba began to speak, something changed in the air. He told the story of Kurpatal, not just facts and dates, but the real story. The grandmother who had saved 15 children during a terrible landslide by hiding them in a cave for 3 days. The young man who had walked through a blizzard for 2 days to bring medicine to his sick wife. The way neighbors shared their last bowl of rice when someone's crops failed. "You see treasure in our mountains," Pemba said to Blackwood, his voice soft but strong. "But we see treasure in our people. Both kinds of treasure are valuable, but only one kind lasts forever. Blackwood tried to stay cold and businesslike, but Elon could see cracks forming in his armor. Several of the corporate executives looked genuinely moved by the stories. Then Tenzin stood up. This brave 12-year-old boy faced a circle of powerful adults and spoke from his heart. "Mr. Blackwood, sir," Tenzin began, his voice steady despite his fear. "I know you think we're just poor people standing in your way, but we're not just poor. We're smart, too." He pulled out his worn science magazine with Elon's picture on the cover. "I've read this magazine 100 times. I know about lithium batteries and electric cars and solar panels. I understand why these things are important." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But I also understand something else." Tenzin looked directly at Blackwood with surprising maturity. "You can take the lithium from our mountain, and it will make batteries for maybe 10 years. Then it will be gone forever. But the things we're building here, knowledge, friendship, ways of living that don't hurt the earth, those things last forever." He paused again, then asked the question that would change everything. "Mr. Blackwood, which treasure is worth more? The one that disappears, or the one that lasts forever?" The silence that followed was deeper than the mountain valleys. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. That's when Blackwood's phone rang. The call was from his board of directors in New York. And as he listened, his expression changed from confident to worried, to something that looked almost like fear. When he hung up, he stared at Elon with a mixture of respect and anger. "You magnificent bastard," he whispered. "What have you done?" Elon smiled quietly, the kind of smile that held secrets bigger than mountains. "I did what you taught me a long time ago, Marcus. I told a story that the whole world wanted to hear." Blackwood's face went pale as he stared at his phone screen. "My board just got 10,000 emails in the last hour. Save Kurpatal is trending worldwide on every social media platform. CNN wants an interview. The UN is asking questions." Around the circle, the villagers looked confused. They didn't understand hashtags or social media or CNN, but they could see that something important had just happened. "What does this mean?" Grandfather Pemba asked gently. Elon turned to his new family, his voice warm with affection. "It means the whole world is watching our village now. While we've been talking and planning together, I've been sharing your story with people everywhere." He pulled out his phone, which had somehow found a signal, and showed them the screen. Even though most villagers couldn't read English, they could see the pictures, photos of their children, their school, their beautiful mountain home. "This is Tenzin fixing a solar panel," Elon explained, swiping through images. "This is Dolma teaching younger children to read. This is Ama Yangchen showing her traditional medicines. This is all of you working together to build something beautiful." "Lahakpa," gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. "The whole world can see us?" "More than see you," Elon replied. "They're falling in love with you. People from America, Europe, Asia. They're all saying the same thing. This village is too precious to destroy." Blackwood's phone buzzed again, then again. Then it started ringing constantly like an angry alarm clock. "Environmental groups are calling for boycotts," Blackwood said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Major investors are threatening to pull out. The Nepal government is getting pressure from a dozen different countries." One of his executives, the young man named Johnson who had tried to speak up earlier, cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, maybe we should consider alternative approaches to this situation." "Alternative approaches?" Blackwood snapped. We've already invested $12 million in this project. But, sir, Johnson continued bravely, the negative publicity could cost us much more than that. Our stock price has already dropped 15% in the last 2 hours. That's when something unexpected happened. Johnson pulled out his own phone and showed it to his boss. Sir, my 8-year-old daughter just sent me this, he said, his voice shaking slightly. She saw the village story online and asked me if I was one of the bad men trying to hurt the children. Blackwood stared at the phone, and for a moment, his mask of corporate coldness cracked completely. Your daughter, he started, then stopped. She wants to know if she can send her allowance to help the village school, Johnson continued. She's 8 years old, and she understands something we forgot. Sometimes the right thing and the profitable thing aren't the same thing. The circle of villagers watched this exchange with fascination. They were seeing something they had never witnessed before, powerful men questioning their own actions. But the most powerful moment came when little Dolma stood up again. This time, she walked over to Johnson and took his hand. Your daughter sounds very smart, she said simply. Will you tell her thank you from all of us? Johnson knelt down to Dolma's level, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. I will, sweetheart, and I'll tell her about the bravest little girl I ever met. Blackwood watched this interaction with something that looked almost like pain in his eyes. Johnson, you're fired, he said quietly. Yes, sir, Johnson replied, but he didn't sound upset. It was worth it. That's when Tenzin did something that surprised everyone. He walked over to Marcus Blackwood and sat down right beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Mr. Blackwood, the boy, said in his careful English, Can I ask you something personal? Blackwood looked down at this child, who should have been afraid of him, but wasn't. What? Do you have children? The question hit Blackwood like a punch to the stomach. Yes, a daughter. She's about your age. Does she know what you do for work? Blackwood's jaw tightened. She knows I run a successful company. But does she know about places like our village? Does she know that your success sometimes means other children lose their homes? The silence stretched like a rope about to break. Every person in the circle could feel the weight of this 12-year-old boy's question. She's too young to understand business, Blackwood said finally. I'm 12, Tenzin replied simply. I understand that business should help people, not hurt them. If I can understand that, maybe your daughter can too. Blackwood's phone rang again, but this time he didn't answer it. Instead, he stared at Tenzin with an expression no one could read. You know what the hardest part is? Blackwood said quietly, almost to himself. I started my company because I wanted to build things. I wanted to create jobs, help communities, make the world better. He looked around the circle at the faces watching him. Some hopeful, some afraid, all of them human. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that communities aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're people with stories and dreams and... He paused, looking directly at Dolma. And children who ask if you want to be their friend. Grandfather Pemba leaned forward on his walking stick. It's never too late to remember, son. The mountain doesn't judge the cloud for casting shadows. It just waits for the sun to shine again. That's when Blackwood's satellite phone rang with a special ringtone, the one reserved for emergency calls from his board of directors. As he listened, his face went through several emotions: surprise, concern, and finally something that looked like fear mixed with respect. I understand, he said into the phone. Yes, I'll handle it immediately. When he hung up, he looked at Elon with an expression that was part admiration, part frustration. "You didn't just make this village famous," Blackwood said slowly. "You made it untouchable. My board just received calls from the World Heritage Foundation, the UN Environmental Council, and 3 different documentary film companies. They want to make Kurpetal a protected cultural site." Elon's smile grew wider. And, Blackwood continued, shaking his head in amazement, "somehow you've managed to get preliminary approval for the village to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Do you have any idea how impossible that usually is?" "Not impossible," Elon replied, "just expensive. And I happen to know some people who care more about preserving beautiful things than destroying them for profit." Blackwood stood up slowly, brushing dust from his expensive suit. His executives gathered around him, waiting for orders. "Sir?" Johnson asked, even though he'd been fired. "What are your instructions?" Blackwood looked around the circle one more time, at Grandfather Pemba's wise eyes, at Lakpa's hopeful face, at Tenzin's brave smile, at little Dolma, who had tried to shake his hand. "My instructions," he said slowly, "are that we need to have a very different conversation about the future of this place." He turned to Elon, and for the first time since arriving, his expression wasn't cold or angry. "You want to save this village? Fine. But if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. No half measures. No feel-good projects that fall apart in 2 years." He paused, looking directly at the children. "If these kids are going to change the world, then let's give them the tools to do it properly." As the sun began to set behind the Io Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, something impossible began to happen. The man who had come to destroy Kurpetal started planning how to save it instead. But none of them knew that the real miracle was still to come. The real miracle began the next morning, when Marcus Blackwood did something no one expected. Instead of flying back to his corporate headquarters, he asked Grandfather Pemba if he could stay in the village for a few days. "I want to understand what I almost destroyed," he said simply. What followed were 3 of the most extraordinary days in Kurpetal's history. The man who had arrived as an enemy became a student, learning about life in the mountains from people he had once dismissed as obstacles to progress. Blackwood followed Dorja to his potato fields, getting dirt under his expensive fingernails as he helped with the harvest. He sat with Ama Yangchen as she explained how different herbs could heal everything from headaches to broken hearts. He even tried to help Lakpa teach the village children, though his first lesson in basic math was more confusing than helpful. But the most important lesson came from an unexpected teacher. On his second day in the village, Blackwood was sitting, alone near the small stream that provided the village's water supply. He was thinking about his own daughter back in New York, wondering what she would think of this place, when little Dolma appeared beside him like a butterfly landing on a flower. "Are you sad, Mr. Blackwood?" she asked, settling down on the grass next to him. "Why would you think I'm sad?" he replied, surprised by how gentle his voice had become around this child. "You have the same face my mama had when Papa went to heaven," Dolma said with 7-year-old wisdom, "like you lost something important, but you don't know how to find it again." Blackwood stared at this tiny girl who seemed to see straight into his soul. "What do you think I lost?" Dolma was quiet for a moment, picking small flowers and arranging them in a pattern on the ground. "Maybe you lost remembering why you wanted to build things in the first place." The words hit him like a lightning bolt. "How did you—" he started, then stopped. "You're very smart for someone so young. Grandfather says everyone is born smart," Dolma replied, adding another flower to her pattern. But sometimes we forget to listen to the smart part inside us because the scared part talks louder. She looked up at him with those impossibly wise eyes. "What is your scared part saying, Mr. Blackwood?" For a long moment, Marcus Blackwood sat in silence beside this child, watching her arrange flowers while his entire worldview crumbled and rebuilt itself. "My scared part," he said finally, "is saying that if I don't make enough money, if my company doesn't grow bigger and bigger, then I'm not important, that I'm not enough." Dalma nodded like this made perfect sense. "My scared part used to say that if I wasn't the smartest girl in school, then nobody would love me. But then, grandfather taught me something." "What did he teach you?" She handed him one of her flowers, a small white blossom that smelled like hope. "He said that flowers don't try to be bigger than trees. They just try to be the most beautiful flowers they can be. And that's enough." Blackwood held the tiny flower like it was made of precious metal. "You think I should be like a flower?" Dalma giggled, the sound like music in the mountain air. "I think you should be like you, but the real you, not the scared you." That evening, as the village gathered for dinner around a large bonfire, something magical happened. Marcus Blackwood, CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, sat cross-legged on the ground like everyone else, eating simple rice and vegetables with his hands, and told stories about his own childhood. He talked about growing up poor in a small town in Ohio, where his father worked in a factory and his mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. He remembered dreaming of building bridges and skyscrapers, of creating things that would help people live better lives. "When did you stop building things that help people?" Tenzin asked with innocent curiosity. Blackwood thought for a long moment. "I think it happened so slowly I didn't notice. First, I just wanted to make enough money to help my parents. Then I wanted to prove I was smart. Then I wanted to be more successful than the people who said I'd never amount to anything." He looked around the circle at faces lit by firelight. People who had every reason to hate him, but had chosen kindness instead. Somewhere along the way, success became about beating other people instead of helping them. "I forgot that the point of building things isn't to destroy what came before, but to make something better." Grandfather Pemba nodded slowly. "The wise builder doesn't tear down the old house until the new one is ready. And sometimes, the old house just needs repair, not replacement." "What if we could do both?" Blackwood asked suddenly, his eyes lighting up with an idea. "What if we could preserve everything beautiful about this place, while also bringing it the resources it needs to thrive?" Elon leaned forward, interested. "What are you thinking?" "Those minerals in your mountains," Blackwood said, his voice growing excited. "What if instead of strip mining them, we used the most advanced extraction technology available? Small-scale, precise, environmentally safe. We take only what we need for specific projects, and we make the village partners in the profits." Lakpa looked confused. "Partners? You own the land," Blackwood explained. "You should own a share of whatever comes from it. But more than that, what if we made this village the headquarters for a new kind of company? One that shows the world how business can be done without destroying communities?" Johnson, who despite being fired had stayed to help with the planning, pulled out his laptop. "Sir, if we created a joint venture with the village, with profits shared equally, and if we used this as a model for sustainable extraction worldwide, we could revolutionize the entire mining industry," Blackwood finished, his old enthusiasm returning but tempered with new wisdom. Tenzin raised his hand like he was in school. "Mr. Blackwood, would this mean we could stay in our village and learn about modern technology?" "More than that," Blackwood replied with a smile that was nothing like his old corporate mask. "It would mean you could teach the world how to do both." As the planning session continued late into the night, with villagers and executives working side by side to design a new kind of future, Dolma fell asleep against her mother's shoulder. But just before she drifted off, she whispered something that only Elon could hear clearly, the same words she had spoken to him on that first day when he crashed into their lives, words that had haunted him for days. Now, finally, he understood what she had meant, and he realized that the greatest treasure hidden in these mountains wasn't lithium or copper or gold. It was the lesson that the smallest voices often carry the biggest truths, and that sometimes the most important journey isn't to the stars, but to the place in your heart where love lives. The collaboration between Blackwood's resources and the village's wisdom would indeed change the world. But the real transformation had already happened in the hearts of men who had remembered how to see themselves in the eyes of a child. As the fire died down to glowing embers and the villagers began to head home, Elon looked up at the stars that had become his friends over these past days. Tomorrow, his jet would be fully repaired, and he could return to his old life of constant motion and endless ambition. But he knew he would never be the same person who had crashed here a week ago. So, question was, what would he do with the person he had become? The answer to Elon's question came at sunrise the next morning, when Captain Rodriguez appeared at his door with news that would change everything. "Mr. Musk," the captain said, his face serious but hopeful, "the jet is completely repaired. We can leave any time you want." Elon stared at his pilot, then looked out the window at the village waking up in the golden morning light. Children were already on their way to school, their laughter floating on the mountain breeze. Smoke rose from cooking fires as families prepared breakfast together. "We can leave," Elon repeated slowly, as if the words were in a foreign language. "Yes, sir. I know you have important meetings waiting back home." Important meetings? Stock prices, board presentations, rocket launches, the endless cycle of ambition that had driven his life for decades. All of it waited for him like a hungry machine, ready to swallow him whole again. But something had changed inside him during these 7 days in Kurpatal, something that made the old life feel like a coat that no longer fit properly. "Captain," Elon said quietly, "give me one more day. There's something I need to do first." That something became clear an hour later, when Elon found himself standing in front of the village school with Tenzin, Dolma, and 15 other eager children sitting cross-legged on the carpet before him. "Today," he announced, "we're going to build something together, something that will connect your village to the whole world and the whole world to your village." For the next several hours, children and adults worked side by side on what would later be called the Kurpatal Communication Project. Using salvaged parts from his jet, solar panels donated by Blackwood's company, and ingenuity that surprised everyone, they built a system that was part classroom, part broadcast studio, and part window to the world. Tenzin, who had dreamed of being an engineer, found himself actually becoming one as he helped design the solar power grid. Dolma, with her natural teaching abilities, figured out how to make the complex technology simple enough for even the youngest children to understand. But the real magic happened when they turned the system on for the first time. Suddenly, the Lakshu, small village school, was connected to classrooms in New York, London, Tokyo, and São Paulo. Children from Kurpatal were talking face-to-face with students from around the globe, sharing their knowledge of mountain plants while learning about ocean science from kids who lived by the sea. "This is incredible," breathed Lhakpa, watching her students teach a group of American children how to identify edible herbs while learning about computer programming in return. Ama Yangchen, the village healer, found herself consulting with doctors in Switzerland about traditional remedies, while medical students in India learned ancient healing techniques that had been passed down through generations. Even Dorje, the potato farmer, discovered that agriculture experts in 3 different countries wanted to learn about his sustainable farming methods that worked without harming the environment. "You see," Elon said to Marcus Blackwood, who had been quietly observing the miracle of connection. "This village isn't behind the times, it's ahead of them. They've figured out how to live in harmony with nature while maintaining strong communities. The rest of the world needs to learn from them." Blackwood nodded, his own transformation evident in how he watched the children with genuine warmth instead of calculating their economic value. "Johnson was right about my daughter," he said quietly. "She would love this place. Why don't you ask her?" Elon suggested, gesturing toward the video screen. 10 minutes later, a 12-year-old girl with her father's eyes but her mother's gentle smile appeared on the screen from New York. Sarah Blackwood looked nothing like the corporate shark her father had become. She looked curious, kind, and excited to meet new friends. "Daddy," she said, her face lighting up when she saw her father sitting on the floor with village children. "You look different, happier." Marcus Blackwood felt tears in his eyes as he introduced his daughter to Tenzin, Dolma, and the other children who had taught him how to remember his heart. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to meet some very special friends who reminded me what's really important." The conversation that followed was magic. Sarah and Dolma bonded instantly over their love of drawing. Tenzin and Sarah discovered they both dreamed of building things that would help people. The village children taught her words in their language, while she showed them pictures of New York City. "Dad," Sarah said finally, "can I visit this village sometime? It looks like the most beautiful place in the world." "If they'll have us," Blackwood replied, looking around at faces that had already answered with their smiles. But the most powerful moment came when little Dolma did something that left everyone speechless. She disappeared for a few minutes and returned with something precious, a small, hand-drawn picture. "This is for Sarah," she announced, holding up her artwork to the camera. "It's a picture of friendship crossing mountains." The drawing showed 2 little girls holding hands across a bridge made of rainbow colors, with mountains on one side and tall buildings on the other. But the most beautiful part was the sky above, filled with stars that looked like they were dancing together. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Sarah whispered from thousands of miles away. "Can you mail it to me?" "Even better," Elon said with a smile. "Your dad can bring it to you when he visits next week, along with gifts from all your new friends." As the global video call continued, something unprecedented began happening. News of the Kurpatal Connection project spread across the internet like wildfire. Village wisdom began trending worldwide. Educational institutions from Harvard to Oxford reached out, wanting to establish exchange programs. Environmental scientists requested partnerships to study the village's sustainable practices. Technology companies offered to help expand the COW communication network to other remote communities. Publishers wanted to create textbooks based on the traditional knowledge being shared. But most importantly, children from around the world began reaching out to become friends with the children of Kurpatal. Within hours, the village school had sister schools on 6 different continents. "Do you see what's happening?" Elon asked the gathered villagers as messages of support and friendship poured in from everywhere. "You're not just saving your own village. You're showing the whole world a better way to live." Grandfather Pemba, who had lived through nearly 8 decades but had never imagined anything like this, wiped tears from his weathered cheeks. "When I was a boy," he said softly, "my grandfather told me that our village was special because it sat where the earth touches the sky. I thought he meant the mountains, but now I understand. He meant that special things happen when people reach high enough to touch each other's hearts." As the sun began to set on this extraordinary day, Elon realized that his question had been answered. What would he do with the person he had become? He would use every resource, every connection, every bit of influence he had built over his lifetime to protect and nurture places like Kurpatal. But more than that, he would carry their wisdom with him wherever he went. The understanding that the most advanced technology means nothing without human connection. That true progress lifts everyone up together. That sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. That night, as the village celebrated their new connections to the world, Dolma finally approached Elon with something she had been saving for the right moment. "Mr. Elon," she said quietly, pulling him aside from the celebration, "I think it's time to tell you the secret I whispered on your first day here." Elon knelt down to her level, his heart beating fast. After all these days of wondering, he was finally going to learn what this wise little girl had seen in him from the very beginning. "I'm ready," he said softly. Dolma reached into her small pocket and pulled out something that made Elon's world stop spinning. A worn, faded photograph that would explain everything about destiny, connection, and why some meetings are written in the stars long before they happen on Earth. Elon's hands trembled as he took the photograph from Dolma's small fingers. In it, a young man with bright, hopeful eyes stood next to a model rocket, his smile full of dreams that reached toward the stars. The man wasn't Elon, but the resemblance was so strong they could have been brothers. "This is my daddy," Dolma said softly, her 7-year-old voice carrying the weight of love and loss. His name was Karma Sherpa. Elon's breath caught in his throat. He knew that name. He remembered that face. The photograph began to blur as tears filled his eyes. "Daddy was an engineer, just like you," Dolma continued, settling down beside him, on the grass outside the celebration. "Mama says he went to America to study rockets. He was going to come back and build flying machines for our village." With shaking hands, Elon turned the photograph over. Written on the back in fading ink were words that made his heart break and soar at the same time. "For my little star, Dolma, Daddy will bring the sky to you someday." Karma Sherpa, MIT class of 2015. "MIT," Elon whispered, the memory flooding back like a river breaking through a dam. The guest lecture on sustainable space technology. "You knew my daddy?" Dolma asked, her eyes lighting up with wonder. "I did," Elon said, his voice thick with emotion. "He was one of the brightest students I ever met. After my lecture, he came up to me with eyes just like yours, full of impossible dreams." Elon closed his eyes and remembered that day 8 years ago. A young man from Nepal, passionate about using space technology to help remote communities. Karma had talked about solar satellites providing power to mountain villages, about communication systems connecting isolated families to the world, about rockets carrying not just astronauts, but hope to places that had been forgotten. He showed me drawings, Elon continued, looking at Dolma with new understanding. Plans for bringing advanced technology to villages like Kurpatal. He said his greatest dream was to prove that you didn't have to choose between tradition and progress, between staying home and reaching for the stars. "What happened to him?" Dolma asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer would be sad. "He got sick during his final year at MIT," Elon said gently. "Cancer," I visited him in the hospital a few times, even then, lying in bed. Connected to machines, he kept talking about coming home to build a better future for mountain communities. Elon looked down at the photograph again, seeing now why Dolma's first whispered words had shaken him so deeply. "What did you say to me that first day?" he asked. Dolma smiled, that wise, ancient smile that seemed too big for her small face. "I said, 'You look like my daddy in the picture. Did the sky people send you to finish his dream?'" The words hit Elon like lightning. For 8 years, he had carried the memory of Karma Sherpa's passionate vision without knowing how to honor it. He had built rockets to Mars, electric cars for Earth, but somehow he had never found a way to fulfill the promise he had made to a dying young man in a hospital bed. The promise to help communities like Kurpatal find their place in the modern world without losing their souls. "Dolma," Elon said, his voice barely above a whisper, "what if I told you that your daddy's dream didn't die with him? What if it was just waiting for the right time, the right place, the right little girl to help make it come true?" Dolma tilted her head, considering this with the seriousness of someone much older. "You mean Daddy's dream is happening right now? With the computers and the solar panels and all the new friends we made today?" "More than that," Elon said, pulling her into a gentle hug. "Your daddy's dream is you. A little girl who sees strangers as friends, who asks hard questions with kindness, who believes that even scary people like Mr. Blackwood can choose to be good." He held up the photograph so they could both see it. "Your father wanted to bring the sky to his village. But you, little star, you've done something even more amazing. You've brought your village to the sky. Children all over the world now know about Kurpatal. They're learning from your teachers, playing with your friends, dreaming about visiting your mountains." As if summoned by their conversation, Lakpa appeared, having noticed her daughter's absence from the celebration. When she saw Elon holding the photograph of her late husband, her eyes filled with tears. "You knew Karma," she said, not a question, but a statement of wonder. "He was going to change the world," Elon replied, "and through Dolma, he has." Lahakpa sat down with them, creating a small circle of connection under the endless stars. "I used to be angry at the sky," she admitted quietly, "angry that it took him away from us. But maybe the sky was just keeping him safe until it was time to send us exactly what we needed." "A broken airplane?" Elon asked with a gentle smile. "A man who remembered how to see magic in small places," Lakpa corrected. "A man who could help finish what Karma started." The three of them sat, in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the celebration continue around the village bonfire. Children from Kurpatal were still connected via video to children around the world, sharing songs and stories across oceans and time zones. "Mr. Elon," Dolma said suddenly, "I have one more secret." "Another one?" Elon laughed. Dolma nodded seriously. "Mama, can I tell him about the letter?" Lakpa hesitated, then nodded. "If you think it's time." Dolma reached into her other pocket and pulled out an envelope so worn and handled that it looked like it might dissolve at any moment. "Daddy wrote this for me before he went to heaven," she explained. "Mama said I should save it until I met someone who could help make his dreams come true." With trembling fingers, Elon opened the envelope and unfolded a letter written in careful English. "My dearest little star, if you are reading this, it means I couldn't come home to build the flying machines I promised you. I'm sorry, my beautiful daughter. I wanted so much to show you that the sky isn't a ceiling that keeps us trapped, but a doorway that connects us to infinite possibilities. But I believe that somehow, someday, the right person will find their way to our village. Someone who understands that the most important rockets aren't the ones that take us away from Earth, but the ones that help us take better care of it. When that person comes, show them this letter. Tell them that a man who loved you more than all the stars in the sky asked them to remember that every great journey begins with someone brave enough to take the first step. Be brave, little star. Dream big. And never forget that home isn't a place you leave behind when you reach for the sky. It's the place you carry with you wherever you go. All my love. Daddy. By the time Elon finished reading, tears were streaming down his face. The letter wasn't just from Karma to Dolma, it was from a father to a daughter, from the past to the future, from a dream that seemed impossible to the moment when it finally came true. Dolma, Elon said, his voice breaking with emotion, your daddy was right. Home isn't something you leave behind. It's something you carry with you and share with the world. He looked up at the stars that had been Karma's inspiration and his own obsession for so many years. I've spent my whole life trying to reach those stars, he continued. But your father understood something I'm just learning now. The most important journey isn't to the stars. It's the journey to understand that we're all connected. Every person, every dream, every act of love that reaches across space and time to touch another heart. As the celebration finally began to wind down and families started heading home, Elon made a decision that would change the rest of his life. Dolma, he said, I want to make you a promise. The same promise I made to your daddy in that hospital room 8 years ago. What promise? That I'll spend the rest of my life making sure that villages like Kurpatal don't just survive, they thrive. That children like you get to dream as big as the sky while keeping their feet planted in the soil of home. He paused, looking at this remarkable little girl who had been his teacher, his guide, and his connection to something larger than himself. But more than that, I promise that I'll carry your village with me wherever I go. Every rocket I build, every car I design, every company I run, they'll all be dedicated to the idea that technology should bring people together, not tear them apart. Dolma smiled and took his hand. Does this mean you're not really leaving tomorrow? Elon laughed, the sound full of joy and peace he hadn't felt in years. Oh, I'm leaving. I have rockets to redesign, companies to redirect, and a whole world to convince that the future belongs to places like Kurpatal. He squeezed her small hand gently, but a very wise little girl once told me that home is something you carry with you. So no, little star, I'm never really leaving. Part of me will always be here, just like part of your daddy lives on in every dream you dream and every kindness you show. As they walked back toward the dying bonfire together, Elon, Lakpa, and little Dolma, the last piece of a cosmic puzzle finally clicked into place. A broken airplane had brought them together. A little girl's wisdom had opened their hearts, and a father's dream, carried through 8 years of waiting, had finally found its way home. The stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was celebrating the moment when love, loss, hope, and destiny finally wove themselves into a story that would inspire the world. But the most beautiful part of the story wasn't the technology they had built or the global connections they had made. It was the simple truth that sometimes the most important journey isn't about reaching your destination. It's about discovering that you were exactly where you needed to be all along. And that's how a broken airplane became the bridge to a dream that traveled across oceans and through time itself. Sometimes the most important journeys aren't the ones we plan. Sometimes they're the ones that happen when we're brave enough to see strangers as friends and small voices as carriers of big wisdom. Just like little Dolma showed us, kindness has the power to change hearts, move mountains, and connect the whole world together. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you listening from right now? Drop a comment below and tell me your city or country. Let's see how far this story of connection has traveled. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please hit that like button to spread kindness to others who need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because every story we share is designed to remind us that no matter how different we seem, we're all connected by our dreams, our hopes, and our ability to choose love over fear. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another incredible story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Remember, just like Elon learned in that tiny mountain village, the journey to the stars begins with taking care of the people standing right beside us. Keep dreaming, keep connecting, and keep spreading kindness wherever you go. Until next time.